This is the fun part about life. I mean, most people are expecting the worst thing to happen to them. They're bracing themselves for whatever it is around the corner that's going to go wrong, because in survival, if you prepare for the worst, you're going to survive, right? But if we're creating something new and unknown, creating a new thing in your life, it can't come in a way that you can predict or expect, because if you can predict it or expect it, it's the known. So then the moment you start trying to figure out how it's going to happen or when it's going to happen, you got in the way. The universe just backs off and says, "Oh, hey, Sean wants to do it, go ahead." But when you are open to being astonished and surprised, and it comes in a way that you haven't expected, you wake up. You kind of wake up from the dream and you go, "Oh my God, it happened." And then you will look back at your entire past and you will want to change one thing in your past. We see this all the time because it brought you to the present moment. That's the moment the past no longer exists. So the surprise, the brain learns by mistakes and surprises. Which would you like a few of? How about some surprises? So when it comes in a way that's just like out of nowhere, that you haven't thought of, and it's your creation, and you're surprised, you're not unconscious any longer. You're more conscious, you're more awake, you're awakened, and you're starting to believe, "Oh my God, I'm the creator of my life. I'm not the victim of my life. I actually did that." And now you take your foot off the gas and you trust a little bit more that things are going to organize in a way that's right for you. That's a divine aspect in us starting to happen instead of that animal aspect. And so we have to lay down the very thing we used our whole life to get what we want for something greater to occur. And that is the greatest habit we have to break, because we got to stay out of the way. If you're creating matter to matter and you're living in stress and survival, the chemicals of stress actually heighten your senses and we become materialists. So then when we're matter trying to change matter, we're always trying to force the outcome, trying to control the outcome, we're trying to predict the outcome, we're in the way. That's because you're experiencing separation. So you try harder, you fight for it, you compete, you manipulate. You do everything you can because you got limited resources, matter to matter. So then when you create from the field instead of from matter, and you feel connected to your vision, and you understand that when your heart is open, your heart is actually drawing the experience to you. Now think about this. If you understood that on a gut level, where would you rush to? There would be no place to rush to. You would never leave the present moment. You would just tune in and draw things to you. That's a much healthier way to live, right? So we force outcomes and we control outcomes because we're in the program of thinking that we're separate. But if you're feeling like your dream has already happened, then you wouldn't be forcing anything. You'd be relaxed in the present moment because the emotion of your future keeps you in the present moment. And so, yeah, it's not something you do in one swing. You got to practice a lot. You got to stay conscious. It's trial and error. But I tell you what, it's always worth the effort, because when it finally happens, you don't even care that it happened any longer, because you're so happy with yourself that you're no longer controlling. And the moment you just let go is the moment it always shows up. And that's the surprise, like, wow, I did it, or here it is. And then that energy, that surprise or the synchronicity, helps us with the next creation. We can use that energy. And wow, I'm thrilled, I'm juiced, I'm in awe, I'm in love, I'm inspired, I'm grateful. Hey, you sit down to create the next day, it's a little easier. And wow, there's even more miracles happen. Oh, well, let's keep it going. Who wants to stop that, right? That's when it gets kind of fun. So the synchronicities and surprises, that is the unknown. But the unknown isn't going to be something scary like we're used to. It's going to be something thrilling. It's really ecstatic, something that's going to wake us up. That's what we want. You know, when we're looking at a person's brain in real time when they're going through some type of change or transformation, you see this massive amount of disorderliness going on in the brain. Like the person is really losing their mind. All the circuitry is coming unglued. There's all this cognitive dissonance taking place. That's the moment they want to quit. That's the moment they want to give up. That's the moment they don't believe in anything. They believe in themselves. That is the prime moment where change takes place right there, because that's the end. They're on the edge there. So it's important for people to understand that if you're going about living every single day in the familiar life that you're living in, and you don't have a vision of the future, then you'll continue to live in routine. And if you wake up every morning and you do the same thing as you did the day before, over time your body's going to be on autopilot, and it's going to drag you into a predictable future based on what you did in the past. And many people lose their free will to a bunch of programs. So then when you sit down and you become conscious of your unconscious thoughts, when you're in the program, you're unconscious, right? So the moment you become conscious of that thought, you're no longer the thought. You're observing the thought, and you begin to objectify your subjective self. You start pulling out of the unconscious program, and consciousness, awareness is the first step to do that. And so many people don't want to light a match in a dark place, because all of a sudden, when they decide to be defined by a vision of the future, they're stepping out of the known. You're going to hear, I can't. It's too hard. It's not going to work. What about this? And those are the thoughts that are standing in the way between that person and that vision. And it has to come up. And if a person has been in the habit of unconsciously complaining and making excuses and feeling sorry for themselves and judging other people, that's their habit. The moment they become conscious of it, now they're out of the bleachers and they're on the field, right? Because now you have to not let that thought slip by your awareness unnoticed. And then if you're living in guilt or suffering or pain or unhappiness, but you live that way every day and it just feels like you, and all of a sudden you become aware, oh my God, I've been guilty for the last 10 years. I didn't even know it. It just felt like me. You're starting to separate yourself from your biology. And so you have to go through the process of unlearning before you relearn. And that 95% of who we are, that is what's stopping us from stepping into a new future. So then if people then are waking up every single day, now think about this, the brain is a record of the past. If you wake up every morning and you start thinking about your problems, and your problems are just memories that are etched in your brain that are connected to certain people and problems and certain objects and things in certain times and places, the moment you start remembering your problems, you're thinking in the past, right? And if every one of those problems has an emotion associated with it, and you start feeling bad or unhappy, now your body's in the past. So thoughts are the language of the brain, and feelings are the language of your body, and how you think and how you feel creates your state of being. So most people then, they start their day in the familiar past. Then they get up and they run through a routine series of behaviors, and their body's now habituated on autopilot into a predictable future. That's the known. So the familiar past, the predictable future are both the known. There's only one place where the unknown exists, and that's the present moment. So then, when you're creative, you got to be present. You got to pay attention to be creative, and that defies or goes against the programming. And so then there has to be some type of waging of intention that's greater than those programs. And most people, they get uncomfortable. They'd rather just get on their cell phone or, turn on the TV and watch a football game or distract themselves from that feeling. But when people really make up their mind to change, they have to come up against those feelings, those habits, those hardwired attitudes. And it takes a great act of will. But when we do it, the side effect is we see changes not only in our health, but in our lives as well. And then we say, wow, that really worked. And now we're the example of truth. That's what makes it so cool.